Welcome to Church 247 TV. We're here today to interview Simply Allyson. You've already seen her featured, you saw her songs, you were engaged in the video, but now you want to know the artist. So we're getting ready to introduce to you none other than Simply Allyson. Well, Allyson, thanks for joining us on Church 247 TV.
Thank you for having me.
Give us a couple of minutes to tell us about yourself.
Well, I am Allyson Watson. My artist name is Simply Allyson. I've been singing since I was 4 or 5 years old, from what I can remember. We started singing in the church, where I still sing to this day in the church. I'm a praise and worship leader. I've been a praise and worship leader for several years. I am also a psalmist. Prophetic psalmist. So basically, God moved me from just being a praise and worship leader to a prophetic psalmist. So basically, what I do now is I sing whatever God gives me. So whatever God gives me, whatever it is for that moment, for that song, for whatever the season is, for whatever the service is, the timing is, I sing whatever God gives me. So that's where I am in life now, because this is where God has brought me from when I started singing when I was younger.
Were you a part of any kind of things in school, or how did you get where you are now?
I was. I've been in all sorts of choir classes. I've been in choir. I've been in swing, swing is when you sing and you dance. It's like Broadway. So I did that for a few years when I was in high school. I did concert choir, which basically we sing, we learn songs, we sing, and we go to different cities or different places in the city to sing, because it was concert choir. And I've been doing that for several years. I sang background for different artists. I did that for a couple of years. And basically, that kind of has brought me to where I am now. Just it teaches you different things, I guess.
Now, what artist did you sing background for?
I sang in a choir with Ernest Pugh. I sang with William, I can't think of his name.
William Johnson?
William Johnson.
Okay. That's Echoes.
That's Echoes of Worship.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what he does now, but that was then. I sang with B. McCargo, and these are local people. And I sang with the different groups, and then they would go to different places, wherever they would have engagements or ministry. We would go with different churches, different places to sing.
Okay. Well, we're based in the Los Angeles area. You know, we always say it's the home where the Azusa Street revival was in Los Angeles.
Right.
So with that area, what events have you attended, with it being Los Angeles? What events have you attended as a psalmist or as a singer where you experienced a move of God that was so great in your life that it impacted you this way, where you want to continue?
Oh, my God. That's a good question. I want to say maybe when I was with Church of God in Christ, we did many convocations, and God would come in during praise and worship, even in our ministry where I came from, where my parents are still the pastors of. God would come in and he would move during praise and worship, where he would use me prophetically to minister to the people in song, in word, whatever it was, it has impacted me to where it's like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, to where it's so powerful and so strong that you just know that that's what you're supposed to be doing.
I ask that question because a lot of times when you are in rehearsal, especially if it's for a convocation of that nature, a lot of times the rehearsal doesn't seem like a rehearsal.
Right.
We end up going into
worship, yeah,
purging on the floor, crying. I mean, we end up in a whole service.
Right.
And so those kind of things impact you in such a way where you love singing.
Yeah.
So with that kind of concept in mind, have you experienced that for yourself?
Oh, my God, yes. I experienced that in my car. I experienced that at home because I'm a worshiper. And because I'm a worshiper, I don't just worship at church. I don't just worship at if we have a ministry engagement. I worship at home. That's my personal life. And even in my personal life, if I'm worshiping at home, God still does the same thing, to where I'm in the floor crying out to him. In rehearsals, worshiping with just teams. Like, okay, you're worshiping with this team and you have to, but when God comes in and does what he does, he moves to where he comes in when you have a pure worship. When your worship is pure and you invite the Father in, he comes in and changes the entire atmosphere. To basically, you hear people say, I'm an atmosphere changer. I'm really an atmosphere changer. Wherever I go to minister, wherever it is, I change the atmosphere because I'm a worshiper. And when I'm a worshiper, the Father lives within me. So if the Father is in me, then wherever I go, he is. So it changes the entire atmosphere wherever I go.
Did you always have that mindset?
Never. No.
How long ago were you able to obtain that?
I want to say it's been several years now to where you really understand the worship aspect of it, because I have been, just like different places, seeing different people do different things and seeing their atmosphere of worship, seeing how they worship the Father, that their worship is not really pure, to where the atmosphere doesn't change. It changes in the moment when you're there, but it doesn't change. They come off, I don't want to say stage, but they come off the stage and they're back to the person there was. It's like there's no change. So I want to say within the several years, I want to say maybe 7 to 10 years, is where I really noticed, like, no, this is God. This is, would be in rehearsals. Even before, when I was in a different denomination, we would be in rehearsal and God would come in and move to where we couldn't do anything else. It was like we tried one song and God came in on that song and we couldn't do anything else. The praise singers were in the floor. I was in the floor. It was just the act of worship that we couldn't even move anywhere else.
Wow. I'm thinking about some of the artists as you're talking, and I'm thinking about James Cleveland. I'm thinking about Mattie Moss Clark, because as a child, and also Andre Crouch, as a child, listening to those songs, especially Andre Crouch and the Hawkins Singers, that was another one. Those things impacted our life in such a way. There were words that were being sung, but we knew the Lord was coming.
Right.
Andre Crouch would sing songs, or the Hawkins family would have different songs, just like he said he would. He's coming back for me, in the twinkling of an eye. That's the songs that I experienced worship at home as a child, just writing the words. And that's when I was able to feel the presence of the Lord come in, and the angels had came and visited my house, during that time, listening to that one particular song. So I'm saying all that to say, those songs had meaning. Right. They had purpose. They were powerful, and you could feel the presence of the Lord. Right. You could feel the revival. You could feel the hunger for God. Right. So when I asked a question about how these things impacted your life, these are the things that I'm talking about, because I would never forget the angelic presence and the songs that we heard in our living room when the angels had come down. Just listen to those songs, just like he said he would. And so that impact in my life let me knew how important singing was, because I was just by myself, but I wasn't by myself. So to hear that and to understand the impact of it, this is why I'm asking you, when did the music have a connection with your soul?
I want to say, I can't put the year on it, but I want to say when I completely gave my life to Christ, and knowing that I love to sing, that music is my everything. I can't put a year on it, but I want to say it's when I really gave my life to Christ and the Holy Spirit came in. That's when it's like everything changed. It was like, no, everything I do is for him. Everything I sing is for him. Everything that happens is for God. God and God only. And that's when everything changed, because it's the words of the song, the lyrics of the song that make the difference. The melody and the harmonies just make it sound good, but it's the lyrics, the words that you actually singing to the Father, that is explaining to him how you feel about him. And that's what worship really is. And that's when the connection hit, no, this is it. this is it. No, I sing for Christ because I know when I sing for him, you can sing anything else in the world. But if it's not for Christ and if it doesn't have a connection to it, to where you feel his spirit, you feel like, no, you can say all day, I'm ministering to the Father. You can sing as many words as you want. You can do as many runs as you want to do. But until you have the connection with the Father and the Holy Spirit, you're like, no, Father, this is for you. I do this because of you. I do this for you. That's when you get that connection. Like it's like a him and me kind of moment. It doesn't matter where I sing. It doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter. Any of that matters. It's for the Father. I can't put a date on it, but I know it's like when the Holy Spirit came in. When I got the Holy Spirit and I had made the connection that nothing else mattered. I just want to sing for God. I just want to sing. Even when it came to my music, I didn't want to sing anybody's music. I didn't want to sing everybody's music. Just because they make music, where's the music coming from? Who's writing the music? How is this happening? I wanted to sing music that came from the Father. I wanted my music to be simple, to where, because God is a simple God. God is not a complex God. He's a simple God. So that's where, the name Simply Allyson came from, because I wanted my music to be simple. I wanted you to be able to sing it and be able to connect with the Father. And like, no, this is simple enough to where the Father can understand it. It's simple enough where you don't have a whole bunch of words to remember. And then you lose the connection with the Father trying to remember all the words of the song. God is a simple God. And all you have to do is love him from your heart that's pure. And it's like, okay, there's the connection.
Wow, that's good. So you mentioned your parents. How did they impact your life? Because you said as a child. So how did your parents impact your life as a child to sing? Because usually when you're a singer like you are, it comes through your bloodline.
Right.
Not everybody is a singer. Some people, they practice, they can go to school to sing, but it's a difference when it's in your DNA.
Right.
So tell me about your parents' part in your life when it came to music. Who's your mom? Who's your dad? Tell me about them.
So my biological mother, her name was Donna. She passed when I was young. When I was 12, she passed. However, there was music in their background. My mother played the piano. My mother sang. They had a group. It's my mother and his two of her sisters and my uncle. So it was 4 of them. And they had like a little group. It was so cute. They were all dressed up in little clothes. It was so cute. But they had their own group. And they would sing in churches. My uncle would play. My aunt, my two aunts and my mother, they were the singers. And so they have musical talent. Even on my dad's side, my dad would say he plays the saxophone. My dad probably can blow the saxophone. That's probably about it.
Okay.
I'm not going to say he can play the saxophone. But my dad was musically inclined. They sang on his side of the family as well. So both sides were singers, and they both sang in church. So it's already in our blood. My grandmother sang. My grandfather on my dad's side sang. So it's like it's on both sides of the family. They both sang. They both were in like groups and singing on a normal basis, this is like all the time. So growing up, all you heard was music. My mother, which is so funny, was a DJ.
Oh.
I had no clue until I was a little bit older that she was a DJ. So she was around music all the time. So my family has been around music all the time. My dad would play music in the house. We were big on jazz. He would play jazz all the time in the house. And it's not even really just the words, it's just the music. So you hear it all the time. So it's already in my blood to sing. And then, but it's like, it's different for me. It's different for me because it's in my blood. My siblings sing, but they don't sing like I sing. I have a different type of connection that is like, no, this is what I was called to do. This is what I was called to do. Sometimes you kind of don't want to be in the front, but this is what I was called to do. And if the Father, how he has to use me, I'm willing for him to use me however way he desires.
Now, it's funny you say this is what you're called to do because your siblings sing. And for the most part, the people that I've seen that was called to do this, there were some characteristic traits in them during the rehearsals, during just singing at home.
Yeah.
And this is one example of a characteristic trait. You would sing and you're doing fine, but then they go, that's the wrong key. So my sister's like that. So how were you like that? Because that's how I would get the elbow, and she was like, So there's certain characteristics where you're the one called out for that, because other people that are like on the side, it doesn't bother them.
Right.
But for the one that is really called, it really affects them in a way.
Oh my God.
And I want to say that because here's another example I'm going to throw at you. Maddie Moss Clark used to throw shoes at people if they got the song or the tune or if they got it wrong. She threw shoes at people.
We're not going to throw shoes at people.
Violence in the rehearsal. So because I don't know what is that?
I can totally understand that because my ear hears it, and I can understand how her ear hears it. It's a certain thing. It's like when you hear the harmonies and you hear the parts. Some people, I'm not going to say they're tone deaf. They just think they sound great. But I can hear it. And it's like almost taking your fingers and scraping on the chalkboard. Oh. And it's like, oh, what was that? And I can point out exactly who was it that made that sound. Because my ear is I don't know, I can't say what my ear is, but my ear is so in tuned to the sound that I can point out. I can be far away and it could be a group or a choir of 100 people. I heard who made that wrong note and I could point you out because my ear is so in tune. So I totally understand. I'm not violent. I do, and I did used to yell because I'm like, what was that? You guys sound like garbage. That was very mean. I'm changing. Because it was just the sound, and it was a horrible sound because it sounded like it was just, I don't want to say crackling, but it sounded like someone was literally just scraping their fingers on the chalkboard. It was like, it's that sound, which is probably the same sound that God hears when people are just giving him anything. It's probably the same sound. It's like the sound that I hear when somebody has a wrong note or they singing something's like flat or out of pitch. It's probably the same sound God hears when they're just giving him anything. Wow. Tinkling brass. He probably hears the same thing, and he probably cringes when he hears the same sound.
Wow. Yeah, because there's a characteristic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So transitioning to, I want to say, James Cleveland, Andre Crouch, because these were the popular songs back in the time that ushered us into it pulled us out of a really hard time, I want to say, but it ushered us into another time of worship where we really feared God. Right. And then the drugs came in to the communities. It's really something how the enemy likes to work because he likes to put a curve in what God is doing. Right. And so now where we are in ministry, I'm thinking about Psalmist Rain. That's a whole different sound.
Yeah, total different sound.
So I know you listen to Psalmist Rain. What do you think about that sound? Because it's different from the Andre Crouch. It's different from, but there's many people who've had that sound. It just may not be out in the public. Right. So you've had that sound. Right. So tell me about that.
That sound is a prophetic sound. That's what that sound is. And what happens is with that particular sound, the sound, it shifts and it moves with God. It's wherever God is moving or whatever God is doing, that's where the sound comes from. Because he's looking for a particular sound. A lot of people talk about the sound. That God, there's a sound. I hear a sound. It's different when you're prophetic. You're really listening to the sound that the Father is giving. So it doesn't always fit in with the different things, with the different sounds of the gospel nowadays or the different CCM music, because that's almost orchestrated. It's almost like this is the sound, this is what's in. Usually prophetic singers don't sing what's in. We're always usually ahead of what's in, because where we are is like what's to come. When you're a prophetic singer, I'm a prophet and I also sing, so I'm a prophetic singer. So usually prophets go ahead of you. They come before you. So this music that we sing, even Psalmist Rain, being a prophetic singer, that sound comes before what's to come. So it's not going to sound like what's in. We're already ahead of what's in. What's in is behind us. That's old. So
Oh, that's
what
good.
is what it's like, no, we're prophetic. It's coming forward. We're moving forward. We're way up ahead of before it's to come for whatever's about to manifest. So we're basically giving you an update from the Father, but musically. We're giving you a music update on what's to come before it gets here. It's sometimes it can be a warning, which she also does. She prays for the world. She does all these different sounds, and they come straight from the Father. And they're like warnings, or they're like updates, like, I'm coming, I'm on my way, here I come, get ready, it's coming. And it's like, what's coming? I don't understand. But if you're not in the prophetic move of God, you won't understand it. And by the time it's there, it's like, oh my God, that's what you meant by get ready. That's what you meant by it's coming. That's what you meant by, because we're already ahead of that. It's already before that. We're on to something else now. We're on to the next move of God. You're still stuck in the, that's what you meant. Oh my God, you mean he's coming like right now. We're already on to the next thing, because the Father doesn't give prophetic singers music or words or even time. You have to understand the times that God is giving the prophetic singer, because you have to remember it's always ahead of time. It's not behind time or in time or this is what's in right now. It's always ahead of that.
So that takes me to the next question, because how important is your team then that's singing with you? Because if you are a prophet, and you're moving into the things of God, that means if people who are not prophets, they can't move with you, or it'll be that sound.
Right.
Because, and the sad part is, a lot of people think they are prophets,
And
or they're amongst the prophets,
Right.
and they think that they can do what you do.
Right.
But there's a difference. And so can you talk about how important the team is, and why you have to know the levels of each person, particularly those who think that they are prophets,
Right.
and they're not? Because when they're not prophets and they're singing with you,
It
there's going to
clashes.
always be
Conflict.
a conflict, because they're never going to understand where you're going. They're never going to understand why you're done with it. They're going to be insulted real quickly. You know, they're going to be on the offensive quite often, because they take things personal.
Personally.
Because they're not moving with God.
Right.
So talk about the importance of your team.
The importance of your team is very, very important. You have to have people who are in sync with you. Everybody won't be in sync with you, but they have to be. They have to understand that they're willing to go. That means you got to be in your word. You just can't. Oh well, we're gonna sing. You just can't get up and start singing. You have to really be in your word and know the time of where you are. Even if if they're not prophetic, they have to understand. Okay, she's prophetic or he's prophetic, and my job as singing with them or singing together is we have to follow. Whether sometimes you want to follow or not, well, I know I can do that too. You know, you hear that a lot of times. I can do that too, but when you're in that place, you see how difficult it is to do that. When God gives you music, you have to be in tune with him. You have to hear what he's saying, because he may give you a song and you're like, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Okay, when you want me to say that? When is that going to come in? And even your musicians have to be in sync, because the musicians either follow or you follow the musicians. If the musicians are also prophets, we're tag teaming off one another, because that's just how it works. He gives everything in part. So when he gives it, it's like they have to understand. So the team has to be prayed up. They can't take things personally, even though it does happen. They have to know, look, okay, you're the prophetic psalmist. I'm not that person. But you may have a different gift. God may have gifted you in a different area. So you have to actually know who you are. Even when you're singing with somebody that's prophetic. Nope, they're the prophetic psalmist. I know what my gifting is. You have to really know who you are in God. So that way, you know, you don't take things personally. You don't get conflict like, oh my gosh, I'm jealous. We don't have any of those issues, because you have to know who you are in God, and have to know that this is who she walks in. This is what she walks in. This is how she moves. This is what she does. So that way, when God gives, because you can hear something all day long, but is that from God? Or is that from something else? Or is that your flesh talking? Or is that because you think you can do it? You giving yourself something, oh, I'm going to put this in right here, and it throws everything off. Well, I didn't know when to jump in, because that's not your position. That's not your position. That's not your job. And a lot of prophetic psalmists prophets, period, walk alone a lot. It's because people don't understand. And when you don't understand, you have to work with a group of people. You have to work with a group of people that really understand where you are. They have to understand how things move. They have to understand that they hear that I'm hearing God. And I'm not just up here just singing anything. I'm hearing God. So I'm follow what the Father is saying. And mostly times, 9 times out of 10, everything I'm hearing, I'm going to say 10 times out of 10, is from the Father. Sometimes I may not have it that Sunday, or I may not have it. Somebody else may have it, which has happened several times. I'm like, I don't hear nothing. And somebody else will start singing. I'm like, boom, no wonder I don't hear, because you got it. But me, my job, even as a prophetic psalmist, I'm still to back you up. That's my job. I know you got it this Sunday, or you got it this Sabbath, or whatever. My job is to back you up. My job is not to get jealous. So having the people that sing with you is crucial. It's crucial, because they have to know God. They have to know who they are in God, and they have to know the position that God has given them. They have to know their giftings. You have to be in your word. You have to be prayed up, because you don't want the enemy to come in. You don't want the enemy to find iniquity in you anywhere. Not a hole, not a spot, not anything. Because then that's what draws you to, oh, I can do that. Oh, she thinks she this, or he thinks he's that. That's what pulls that in, because there's iniquity found in you.
Wow. Simply Allyson.
Yes.
I love the album. I was there for the project,
Thank
and it
you.
was really an awesome experience in God. I can't even explain it, but you had to been there.
Yes.
And so being in the atmosphere, as you explained earlier, how important setting the atmosphere is, give us a couple of songs that you saw impacted the project or the concert or the worship. What were a couple of songs where you saw people's lives change in the midst?
One of the songs is You Are God, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. God gave us that song in Bible study one day. And I remember it so clearly, because I remember asking you, okay, Mom, I'm just ready to get into work. Let's just get in work. You're like, no, just sing a simple song. And I was like, all right, God, give us a simple song. And then he gave us You Are God. It's a very simple song, but it's a beautiful song, because it talks about who God is. You're God, you're truth, you're holy, you are God. It talks about who he really is. And I remember when we sang it, it could have went on and on, but it's like you just had to cut it off at the live, because it just kept going. It just kept going. That is like literally one of the longest songs on the album, because it just kept going, because God took it somewhere. Because once you really tell him, like, you are God, you're truth, you're holy, you are God, and you're singing that song to him at the concert, or at the live, it just went. And I remember in rehearsal, when we were at the studio rehearsing the song, and we were telling them, like, no, this song is gonna go. And I remember when the keyboard player, Stephen, was just like, no, we was like, no, this song is gonna go. It's gonna go somewhere, it's gonna go. So just be prepared. And that's just what the song did. The song went, and it just kept going on. We literally had to like cut it off, because it just kept going on and on, because people finally grasped the concept of like, no, you're God. You're God. And that's one of the best songs on the album. One of the other songs on the album that I like is Psalms 113. 113 is because of the groove of the song that God gave. I remember when he gave it to me, he just kept saying blessed, and I didn't understand what he meant when he kept saying blessed, blessed. I was like, I don't understand. And then I got the word, and then he took me to Psalms 113, and then there was the song. And I was like, oh, well, why you just didn't say that? But that's just kind of how God does things. So I love the song, those two songs. I know there's another song that kind of like went everywhere, and everybody loves the song because it's a hymn, and it's Great Jehovah. It wasn't one of my favorite songs on the album, but so many people that I talked to, like, oh my God, that's my favorite song, because it is a hymn. Most people don't sing hymns anymore, but it is a hymn, and most people love that song because it takes them back to where they were, or where they used to be, or where they came from. It just takes them back.
Yeah, and your dad, Pastor George Fort, used to always talk about the importance of
singing hymns. Yeah.
Hymns, yeah. So how do you think that impact? Because he said it's important. So taking what he said, and you said that's one of the songs that the people are hearing. What is the impact of that? I mean, is that really true?
I want to say it is true, because back then people didn't have a lot of stuff going on. All they knew was God. That's when they were really into God. I mean, yes, the devil was always out there. Yes, the enemy was always doing things. Yes, things were always happening, but they always went back to that old song, God, you guide me.
Mhm.
God, you tell me where I need to go. God, you do what I'm following you. And that's when people really followed the Father.
Mhm.
That's back when they had the move of God, like the Bonnie Bray house. That's when like the revival really took place because people went back to those old hymns.
Mhm.
They went back to where they started like, no, I don't need that churchy stuff right now. I need God.
Mhm.
And those hymns is what took people back to God. They took them back to know. I remember when I was a child, we sang hymns, and that meant something to me because they meant something. They wasn't just worldly songs. They weren't just songs of the now. No, it meant something. And that's what hymns kind of do. They kind of take you back to God, where you loved God, where you were in the atmosphere like, nope, I just want to serve God. That's it. And it takes you back to that place. And that's usually what hymns do. They take you back to that place where you were into God and it was just nobody or nothing but God.
How important was this project? Because you have at least, what, 9 songs on this project? About 9?
8?
How many songs?
6.
It's 6?
6 songs? 6 songs on the
Oh.
project. How important was it?
This project was very important only because the Father said do it. And okay, I was like, okay, do it when? And then it literally came out on October 26th, which for me is birthday month.
What year? Because they're in 2022 now.
It came
so
out
October
in,
26th.
It came out October 26th, 2019. And my sisters came out, Deanna LaChanez, her album came out first.
Mhm.
And then right after that, God said, let's go, let's do it. And I was like, okay, we got to work on this. We got to do it now. And we had to do it by a certain time. And it had to be done by a certain time. It's because God knows his timing. We don't know his timing, but God knows his timing. And because of his timing, it had to be out by a certain time. It had to be done by a certain time. It had to be recorded by a certain time. Everything was on God's time schedule, not our time schedule. And usually I celebrate my birthday the entire month. But that month and that particular year, I did nothing for my birthday because God said, no, get this album out. This is your job. Get it done. And that's what I had to do. So it came out October 26th. It was the last Saturday in October.
Wow.
Is when it came out.
Wow. Wow. So what does your husband say and your children say about this project?
They love it. I remember when certain songs would come out, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, listen to this. And because they're not they know God and they know the Father, but they're not into God the way that I am. They know the word, they know how to follow it, they know who to call on when they need. But hearing it's like, oh my God, Mom. One of their favorite songs is You Are God. It's because it takes them in. It takes them into the Father. Like, oh my God. I remember my son-in-law. He was like, Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, he was all in. Hands lifted, the whole 9. He was all in because he was like, oh my God, I've never heard you in this. I've never heard you. I knew you could sing, but I didn't know like this.
Wow.
He was like, wow, Mom, this is so awesome. But my kids loved it. I would let them hear like certain clips and it was like, oh my God, Mom, I love it. I love it. The same with my husband. My husband critiques me like, well, you know, you could fix this or you could fix that. And I understand because he wanted to be right.
Right.
He wanted to have the best. He's like, no, fix this. He's like, don't make it sound like auto-tune. You know, people that does auto-tune really can't sing. And I was like, it's not going to be auto-tune, but okay. But I understand where he was coming from. It's like, no, I want you to do right because you have a sound. You have it. And people need to hear what you have. So they love it. And I thank God for their support because those are my babies. That's my husband. I thank God for their support.
How about your parents?
My parents they was just excited. They was just excited. I need to have a hard copy. I want the hard copy of it. Yes, they probably downloaded it because they wanted to have it. This is my daughter. But no, I need the hard copy. So that way, this is my daughter. This is her album. You guys got to go here. Because even in ministry, being with them and, you know, ministering with my parents when they were when I was at the church with them, ministering them, it's a very critical part of ministry. Music and word that's God. Music and word. It's a very critical part in ministry, in any ministry, but in ministry period. And so it was almost like I'm not gonna say a tag team, but a tag team. My daughter does praise and worship, but she's a prophetic psalmist. So basically, she's hearing from God. And every time I would get up to minister, it would be in line with whoever was ministering for that day. Because God knew exactly what needed to be done. He knew exactly what would happen. Sometimes we get to the point to where all what happened will be praise and worship. The people will be wiped out. The praise team will be wiped out. And nobody could do anything else. And pastor would get up, okay, that's it. God did whatever he's going to do. That's it. We're going home. Because God came and did. Sometimes, I'm not going to say something. God always knows what the people need. And whenever the psalmist comes before that, that's why they said, send Judah first. They sent the music first, and then the word came behind it. Because it prepares the people for the sound. It prepares them, it prepares their heart. It gets them ready for what God has to say to them. So that way they're feeling like, okay, I'm not ready for this yet, or the word was too harsh today. The music either will pacify them, it'll hype them up, it'll get them ready for whatever the word is when the word comes. And usually whatever the word was in sync with whatever praise and worship was.
Wow. Tell me about the song Free. I play that music, that particular song, that's what I cruise to. Tell me why you wrote that song. Where did it come from?
Oh my God, because God gave it to me about being free. When you're bound in something, or when you actually see the light, when you see freedom, you get a sense inside you're like, no, I'm free. I'm free. Can't nobody block me. Can't nobody stop me. I'm free in God. So whatever it is that God wants to do, I am free to do it. I am free to move. I'm free to do whatever it is I need to do, or that God needs me to do. Sometimes you feel like you're bound. When you're bound in ministry life, like you can't do certain things, or no, because the people are going to be this way, or the people are going to be that way. God told me I was free. And the word says, when you're free indeed. I'm free indeed. So which means I'm free in everything.
Well, that's a lot being said. And I just want y'all to know this is more than just music. So we have Simply Allyson. She has a lot to say. So we're going to let her go ahead and close out, because we want her to talk to you all what she wants to have on her heart. By the way, I love your hair. Explain your hair as you go.
Let me explain my hair.
But thank you for joining us, Church 247 TV. But she's going to close it out, and she's going to just give you her heart, because we're talking to the nations. We're talking to people in Africa. We're talking to people in Senegal. We're talking to people in Italy. We're talking to people all over the world. What would you want them to know? Because there is a purpose and reason for a sound. And many people may be feeling a little off when they get something new. So, not saying that I want you to talk about that, but close us out with tell us about your hair, and then talk to us about what God has put it on your heart.
Okay.
And thank you so much for taking this time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm talking about my hair. So my hair is rainbow. It's all different colors, because I love colors, and God is a colorful God. I do know that this month, which is June, is Pride Month, but I wore my hair in these colors because God invented the rainbow. God invented the rainbow, and the rainbow is all these different colors. The enemy is a copycatter. So what he tries to do is change things around. So that way, when you see the rainbows, you don't see God, you see Pride Month. You see gay and lesbian awareness. But this is all about God. And so that way, when someone asks me about my colors and my hair, is this for Pride Month? No, this gives me an opportunity to talk about God the Father. It gives me an opportunity to tell them about the God that I worship. It gives me an opportunity to tell them why I worship. And I worship because it's what God requires. God told us this is what we were made for. We were made to worship the Father. The reason why he made us to worship, praise is not for us. Praise is to increase us and to lift us up. Worship is for the Father. It's so we can tell him how much we love him. We can tell him how much we appreciate him. And being a prophetic psalmist, everything that I hear, everything that's happened, it comes from the Father. And it changes atmospheres. It moves things, not just physically, it moves things mentally and spiritually. So we have to understand that it may sound different to you being a prophetic psalmist. It may sound different, like that sound is not what's in. It doesn't matter what's in. Remember, the prophetic psalmist is already ahead of time. What's coming is always what's going to happen afterwards when everybody gets there to that point. But prophetic psalmist sing with what's coming ahead of time. So don't feel like you're behind times. Don't feel like you're stuck in a time. Know that you are ahead of the time, because if you're a prophetic psalmist, you are ahead of times. And that sound is going to come right when it's needed the most.
Well, you've heard it, Simply Allyson. You heard it yourself. So buy her CD, find the music. Get ready to just know that what God has given her, it came straight from heaven. So God bless you. Thank you for this time. See you next week.